Business Growth Geniuses. If you're not a member of the BGG group, Business Growth Geniuses on Facebook, it's a great community. It's focused, it's really centered around the people that I've interviewed and some other entrepreneurs that are really interesting as well. So check it out. Ask to join. In most cases, I accept, unless you have a really, really weird profile that looks like spam. But in most cases, I accept. All right, I'm here with Eric Clapper. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Excellent. So welcome to the B2B Sales Geniuses series.
I'm glad to be on board.
Awesome. That's good to have you. And I've done an interview and a live AMA with your colleague, Stephen Benson. Mm-hmm. That was a pleasure to connect with him and talk with him for a while as well. And I thought it would be interesting to do one with you as well. So Eric Clapper is VP of Sales and Sales Operations at Bachelor Maps, the #1 route planner for field salespeople. Eric has been with Badger since the beginning and is passionate about making its users successful and providing a great experience. He has a bachelor's degree in classics and a master's in management science and engineering, both from Stanford University. So again, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
It's good to have you. All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background? How did you get to become VP of Sales at Badger?
You know, given that this has still been my first real job out of college, I applied to a random ad through the job board at my university, and the CEO at the time and our current CEO and founder took a chance, and I think I came out with a bit of an analytical background, from the management science and engineering program at Stanford, but I think a lot of it had never really been sharpened in a real world kind of scenario, and so as the role grew and the kind of the needs of the company changed, I was able to grow into a variety of different positions that kind of culminating where I'm at now, and I've been with the company for since September of 2012, so almost 5.5 years now. And I've been an SDR, an account executive, now sales manager, and now VP of sales and sales ops. As the need for the positions have changed, I've been managed to grow just based on the opportunities here at Badger.
Okay, so what is Badger Maps?
Badger Maps is an application for those in field sales. They need to optimize their day. They're often graded on how many people do you get in front of, over a given cycle. Is that, that could be 2 weeks, it could be 6 weeks, on a quarterly basis. And often your best field salespeople aren't actually your best salespeople. They're just often your most organized. And so Badger's looking to take what makes organized field salespeople, good salespeople, and kind of apply that to people that might not have the organizational skills, and help them plan out their day, not just today and tomorrow, but into the future, so that they're more disciplined way of going after these companies or going after these contacts, these deals, so that they're ultimately generating more sales.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk a little bit about your biggest failures and what you've learned, especially from those failures throughout your career. Maybe not only just at Badger Maps, but in general. What have been your biggest failures and lessons from those?
I think the biggest failures that I've experienced have been, I think the ones that come to mind are in terms of when I think about closing separate certain deals, and that it almost always comes from going after a prospect, thinking like instead of putting myself in their shoes, I imagine that it's like, oh well, they think like me, instead of forcing myself to how would I look at the deal from their side. And ultimately it's always led to just a longer sales cycle, a poor conversion. And so I think things that I always have to make sure that I focus on is that when I'm, kind of working with whether it's, wherever they, if it's, a renewal, or if it's any, an upsell, that it's, how do I attack it from their perspective? What are their major concerns? I obviously, I'm a sales guy. I want to close the deal, but it's very easy for kind of my own kind of desires and objectives to say, here at the forefront. But if I don't consider it from their perspective, blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time, but it doesn't really lead to kind of long-lasting, sustainable success.
That's great. Okay. And what about your biggest successes in sales?
I think that the biggest successes that I've had in sales aren't individual deals, but so much getting the coworkers and direct reports to kind of to see things from a different light. And it's not just kind of saying, if do this one trick and, all of your wildest dreams will come true. It's more of how do you inspire a group of people to, because since sales is an accumulation of ability, training, very specific strategies for dealing with situations. Like, how do you inspire people to say, it's like, you never really figure it out, but it's, every day we get a little bit better. And I would say my biggest success is getting the, seeing team members, you come along in their, kind of as they get more experience at sales, since most of our sales team, this is their first role in sales. And so getting them to see things from a perspective where it's like, how do I approach this in a way that it's not just me telling them what to do, but them seeing, okay, how does this fit into the bigger picture? How does this make me a better salesperson? How does this make me a better part of the sales process here at Bachelor? And that would say is my greatest success.
So you did mention your sales process. So what is your sales process at Badger Maps?
Ideally, we have kind of there's 3 levels. There's kind of the pre. There's generating awareness in Badger, and that's marketing. And marketing is responsible for getting people interested in signing for trials, giving us a call, sending us an email, helping, letting us know that they're interested. And at that point, there's whether they're in a trial, they sign up for a trial, they reach out. Then it goes to kind of the pre-sale team, a bit of SDR, AE work, and having the SDRs, AEs kind of say, okay, so how do I form this into a group? Because a lot of times you'll have forward-looking people at companies saying, hey, my company uses some archaic system. I really want to use Badger. So, okay, so what kind of group can they bring together? Is it a manager looking for his team? Is it someone looking for themselves? Is it a director looking for a whole division? And kind of getting a sense of what do they have the power to set up in a pilot? Because we want to make sure that we're not saying, oh, okay, well, only come talk to us when the whole company's in. It's like, well, let's get a pilot together that's on a small enough scale that can move fast and make some decisions, but it's big enough that the results can be relevant for the rest of the team. And so that's where that pre-sale process, that going through and saying, okay, so how do I make sure that I'm presenting this in a way that illustrates the need they're looking for in a way that I think applies to their situation. And then once they've said, hey, there's potential here. If this, the pilot period goes well, I'm committed to buying. At that point, they get handed off to a dedicated account manager who, even though we haven't, for a lot of cases, we haven't been given, there hasn't been, there might have been a credit card round, but there hasn't been a huge check signed or a huge contract signed. That the goal is of that account manager to make sure that each rep is bought in. Like, a lot of it's making sure that the app is downloaded on the person's phone or tablet or whatever they're taking to the field, make sure that all of their crucial questions are answered. And then at that point, they should wait for the renewal to come through. And I think one of the things that really helps us is the fact that, I haven't found the statistic out there yet, but it's, what % of software or technology deployments fail because the person's unable to use their tablet or phone. The number of times that people, account managers come to me and they say, oh yeah, well, I spent most of the call helping them set up their iPad, and then after that they were good. It's like it would be shocking.
What would be your top advice? Let's say top 3 pieces of advice, if possible, for field salespeople, but also salespeople in general. From your experience, what advice would you give them?
Top 3 pieces of advice. I would say the most important is that, at least as it relates to Badger, is that I think no one doesn't lavish enough attention on their top accounts. That almost everyone has, like, okay, your top 10 accounts or your top 10%. There's this group of accounts that is just you end up focusing a lot on because they are the most valuable. But I think the next level of accounts where it's of whether if you go on the A/B system, these are your B accounts that you might be pretty good about visiting them or focusing on them, but it's not uniformly. And so I think that's often where the greatest value it lies in is when you get organized and say, okay, well, I haven't visited these customers in a while. I should go after here are my B accounts, even though they're not as big as my A accounts. I haven't spent nearly enough time or focus going after these accounts. And so going in and saying, hey, this is what I need, showing them a face. And I think a lot of times, because people are like, well, it's not worth that much because it's not an A account. But given that there's a lot of value to be had in that kind of middle group of accounts, I think that's specifically for field sales and then using Badger in general. I think the other 2 pieces of advice for sales reps in general, I feel like a big point is think about the sale from the client's perspective. That when you imagine what are they trying to do, what are they trying to accomplish, that framing what you need in terms of accomplishing their objectives is going to do a whole lot further in the conversation than almost anything else. And then from final piece of advice on kind of a more of like a sales process is thinking about as a sales rep, kind of a thought exercise, spending like, okay, what are the top 10 things that you spend your time doing? Kind of write them out and say, if you say you have 100% of your working hours in a given week, what time do you spend? And I think people would be surprised at kind of thinking about, well, how much time do I spend on this and how much value am I getting out of it? Because a lot of times people spend a lot of time on things that don't create any value for them. And making sure, just because sales is almost always about time and timing. And I think being more cognizant of the time you spend on activities that you feel like aren't advancing the sale, rolling the ball down the field, that limiting when possible the time you spend on those activities can go a long way towards boosting your sales numbers.
What would be your call to action for people watching this? What would you like them to do? Maybe just check out your website or do something else?
Yeah, anyone who's interested in learning more about how they can visit 20% more while driving about 25% less, I'd invite you to check out badgermapping.com. Sign up for a free trial, see what it's all about.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, thank you very much for doing this call. I appreciate it. And I hope that people watching this got some value from it as well. And we'll talk soon.
Good.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.